You open your banking app. There's a little green graph in the corner, ticking upward. Your savings account balance. It feels like progress. It feels like you're doing the responsible thing. But that little green graph is lying to you. Not with fake numbers. The dollars are real. What's fake is what those dollars can actually buy you a year from now. And that's just the first lie your bank is comfortable letting you believe. Banks aren't evil, but they are institutions built to profit from what you don't know. And the gap between what they tell you and what's actually true is where most people quietly lose decades of wealth. Today we're breaking down the biggest money lies your bank is more than happy to let you keep believing. Let's start with the one sitting in your savings account right now. You've been taught that saving money is safe. Keep it in the bank, watch it grow, sleep easy. And on paper, your balance does grow. Maybe you're earning 0.5% a year. Maybe, if you shopped around, you found a high yield, paying 4%. Sounds fine, until you remember inflation. Milton Friedman spent much of his career studying exactly this problem, the quiet tax that inflation places on cash that isn't working. His famous line was that inflation is always and everywhere a monetary phenomenon. In plain English, prices rise because the value of money itself is shrinking, year after year, whether you notice it or not. So if inflation runs at 3% and your savings account pays you 1%, you didn't grow your money, you lost 2% of it, quietly, without a single red notification on your phone. Your bank will never send you a push alert that says, you just got poorer while you slept. Why would they? That 1% they're paying you is money they're borrowing from you at a steep discount, then lending back out to someone else at 4 times the rate. That's lie number one. A savings account is where money grows. In real terms, for most of the last decade, it's where money has quietly shrunk. Here's the second lie, and this one is more dangerous because it's dressed up as good advice. You've probably heard some version of it. Carrying a small balance on your credit card helps your credit score. Don't pay it off completely. Leave a little something on there every month to show activity. This is false, completely measurably false. FICO, the company behind the credit scoring model used by the vast majority of American lenders, has stated directly that carrying a balance does nothing positive for your score. What actually helps is your credit utilization, how much of your available credit you're using, and utilization is calculated whether you carry a balance or pay in full every single month. So why does this myth survive? Because a small monthly balance, multiplied across hundreds of millions of cardholders, generates an enormous amount of interest revenue. Someone somewhere benefits from you believing this. It just isn't you. Daniel Kahneman, the psychologist who won a Nobel Prize in economics for exposing how irrationally humans handle money, described this exact pattern in his work on prospect theory. People don't evaluate financial decisions logically. They evaluate them through mental shortcuts. And once a shortcut like carrying debt helps my score spreads far enough, it stops sounding like a myth and starts sounding like common sense. That's lie number 2. Debt discipline requires debt. It doesn't, it requires the opposite. There's a third lie, and it hides in plain sight on every credit card statement you've ever received. Right next to your balance in small print sits a number labeled minimum payment due. It looks helpful, manageable, like the bank is doing you a favor by not demanding the full amount at once. It isn't a favor, it's a formula. The minimum payment is calculated to stretch your balance across as many months as possible while maximizing the interest collected along the way. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau has published this plainly. Paying only the minimum on a typical credit card balance can take over a decade to clear, and can more than double the total amount you eventually pay. A $4,000 balance, paid at minimums alone, can quietly turn into $8,000 or $9,000 by the time it's gone. Richard Thaler, another Nobel laureate in economics, spent years studying exactly this kind of design, what he called a nudge. A small, seemingly neutral default that quietly steers people toward a specific behavior. The minimum payment field isn't neutral. It's a nudge toward paying slowly, and paying slowly is where the profit lies. That's lie number 3. The minimum payment is a safety net. It's a leash. Now let's walk through what these lies actually look like in a normal month, because they rarely show up alone. They show up together. Picture your paycheck landing on the first of the month. You pay rent, groceries, a few bills. A $400 credit card statement arrives. You've got the cash to pay it off completely. But somewhere in the back of your mind is that old advice. Leave a little on there. It's good for your score. So you pay $300 and let $100 ride into next month. That $100 now accrues interest. Not much, maybe $2 this cycle. Small enough to ignore. Except it doesn't stay small. Thomas Stanley, who spent years researching the actual habits of wealthy Americans for his book, The Millionaire Next Door, found something almost every self-made millionaire in his research had in common. They treated small, recurring leaks, the ones too minor to seem worth fixing, as the real threat to their net worth. Not the big purchases, the quiet, repeated ones. $2 a month doesn't sound like anything. But compounded the wrong direction, month after month, year after year, alongside a savings account that's losing to inflation the entire time, you get a household that works hard, pays its bills, checks every box it was taught to check, and somehow never gets ahead. That $100 balance is one story. But imagine it's not $100. Imagine it's a real balance, the kind most households actually carry, somewhere near $4,000. You're not ignoring it. You're doing exactly what the statement tells you to do. You pay the minimum on time every month, and you feel responsible for it. Years later, that same balance is still there, not because you spent recklessly, because the payment was engineered to keep it there. That's not bad luck. That's 3 myths working exactly as designed. Here's the counterintuitive twist. The system isn't rigged against you through some dramatic conspiracy. It's rigged through boredom, through advice that sounds reasonable enough that nobody bothers to check it. Burton Malkiel made a similar point in A Random Walk Down Wall Street about investing. Most people lose money, not through one catastrophic decision, but through years of small, unquestioned ones that quietly compound against them. Notice the pattern underneath all 3 lies. Your bank pays you close to nothing on the money you deposit, then lends a version of that same money back out through credit cards at 20% interest or more. The gap between those 2 numbers has a name, net interest margin, and it's one of the most reliable profit engines in banking. Every myth we just walked through pushes you a little further toward the wrong side of that gap. Keep your cash sitting still. Keep a small balance alive. Keep paying the minimum. None of it is an accident. All of it is the same machine, running quietly in the background of an ordinary month. The fix for all 3 lies is almost embarrassingly simple, and that's exactly why it doesn't spread as fast as the myths do. For the savings account problem, money you won't touch for years shouldn't sit somewhere that guarantees it loses value. It needs to be invested, even conservatively, so it has a chance to outpace inflation instead of surrendering to it. For the credit card problem, pay your statement in full, every single month, without exception. Your score doesn't need a sacrifice. It needs consistency. And if a real balance already exists, ignore the number labeled minimum. Pay as far above it as you can, every cycle, until the balance is gone. The bank designed the low number. Nothing requires you to use it. Now bring this back to your own bank account today. Somewhere in there is a balance that feels like progress, but is quietly losing ground to inflation. Somewhere on a credit card statement is a small amount you left unpaid because someone once told you it was smart, or a minimum payment you've been quietly trusting for years. None of those decisions was stupid. They were reasonable responses to bad information, repeated so often it stopped sounding like a myth. You open your banking app. There's a little green graph in the corner, ticking upward. This time you know exactly what it isn't telling you.